day. She wrote, "When I came to Congress, I knew I had a responsibility to pull back the curtain for the American people and expose corruption in real time. So I'm filling you in on Senator McConnell's attempts over the last 8 days to tank a bipartisan COVID relief bill. You may have heard that Democrats and Republicans have agreed upon spending $900 billion to fund another round of small business loans, support hospitals and essential workers, and help the 10 million people who lost their jobs through no fault of their own. Everyone at the negotiating table, including Senate Republicans, has agreed to a compromise except one. Mitch McConnell is refusing to bring it to the floor unless it wipes away all COVID-related lawsuits filed that allege injury or death due to corporate negligence. These lawsuits represent the worst of the worst examples of disregard for human life, cases filed on behalf of nursing home patients and grocery store workers who died because the company in charge of keeping them safe prioritized cutting costs over protecting them. The same McConnell who said that President Trump is 100% within his rights to pursue baseless lawsuits alleging election fraud is now refusing to pass urgently needed relief unless it strips those same rights from the most vulnerable among us. This must be exposed.
I'm hearing stories about workers who are scared to go to work because they don't have enough PPE. I'm putting food into trunks of cars to help people at food banks. This is the epidemic in America. It's an epidemic of COVID. It's an epidemic of hunger. It's an epidemic of housing insecurity. You know what? It's not an epidemic. It's not an epidemic of lawsuits. And any effort by Mitch McConnell to suggest that that is happening is flat out lying to the American people. That when the federal government passes a law, in this case, the proposal from Mitch McConnell is to allow corporations to act as recklessly as they want and to not be on the hook if people get COVID and die as a result of their recklessness. And so the federal law would override the state law. Now, it's interesting to think about this. I've been thinking a lot today about my tort class in law school, where I learned about how these rules about employer liability came to be. We put these rules in place because corporations, particularly at the time railroads, were allowing their workers to get maimed, to be killed, and not engaging in any kind of reasonable safety precaution. So we adopted the standard we have now. So if businesses are following reasonable rules, state public health guidelines, they're not going to face any liability. There is no epidemic of liability. In fact, there are more lawsuits, baseless lawsuits brought by Trump about this election than there have been medical malpractice or personal injury lawsuits relating to COVID-19. So Mitch McConnell is in search. This is not a problem. This is simply about giving his corporate donors what they want. So when I listen to you talk about Steve Smith, and he's talking about this conspiracy to keep, his words, a conspiracy to keep in power, I think it's really important to peel back. Keep who in power? And the answer is the nation's largest corporations who want a green light they basically want a license to kill without any liability.
Well, Rachel has covered in depth the way things have been handled in meatpacking plants, including people in one meatpacking plant at the management level making bets on how many people working in that meatpacking plant would get COVID-19. They were actually betting on it. And that's exactly the kind of situation that Mitch McConnell is trying to prevent any lawsuit arising out of evidence like that has emerged.
And we've seen it right here in Orange County. Right here in Orange County, we had 46 workers who got sick at a single call center owned by AT&T. 2 of those workers died. And yet, Mitch McConnell wants to let AT&T off the hook for having to do anything to try to keep those workers safe. If Mitch McConnell's rule were to go forward, then companies would not have to provide PPE. They wouldn't have to follow state public health guidelines. And if they ignored all those rules to put profit ahead of people and people died as a result, they'd get off the hook. That's what Mitch McConnell is holding up relief to hungry people, people facing eviction over.
The bills that the House has passed that Mitch McConnell has just stiffed, not even given a chance to even be considered there, it has a pernicious effect of making Washington and the national media ignore those bills because they don't have a chance to pass the Senate. It's important work that you've been doing and Nancy Pelosi's been doing over the whole year that just gets ignored because of this McConnell roadblock.
Well, I think that's understandable from the perspective of the American people. They need help. They need food on the table. They need a roof over their head. They need unemployment assistance. They need these things. And a bill that doesn't become a law doesn't improve and change their lives. So I understand and deeply sympathize with the American people, but I want them to understand that what's holding us back is standing up to make sure that they're going to be safe in the workplace, that our essential workers will have to have reasonable safety precautions in the workplace, that nursing home patients will have to be protected by nursing homes following reasonable safety precautions. That's what we're fighting for.